Getting familiar with a new TFT set is one of the most exciting parts about playing the game. There are new synergies to explore, new champions to play, and new comps to abuse. But playing at the start of the set is much different when compared to playing during the middle or at the end. So here's 9 easy tips for quickly climbing at the start of the set. Tip number 1, know that your opponents don't know what they are doing. After every set, there is a rank reset. During a half set like 7.5, they do what's called a soft reset. This means your MMR or hidden rank is approximately the midway point between your old rank and the median rank. This means if you're platinum and the median rank was silver, your MMR would be around gold. So instead of facing platinum players, you'll now be facing primarily gold players. Use this to your advantage because playing against weaker players means you need to adjust your playstyle a little bit, and I'll tell you exactly how to do that. So, since no one knows what they're doing, you need to focus mainly on the fundamentals of TFT to gain an edge. If your old strategy was to force a comp, you will fail because no one knows what the best comps are at the start of the set. The beginning of sets heavily rewards flex and inventive players. But let's get into how to punish these players with tip number 2. Win streaking is better than lose streaking. So new sets make playing for win streaks much more effective than lose streaking because no one knows which comps are the best, as we stated before, and this means that gold is less useful in the hands of every player, no matter if you're a beginner or a pro, at the start of the set compared to the end. Therefore, health is a more important resource than gold at this point. As the set matures, gold will become more important than health because you'll improve at using your gold. So in your first few games, almost always try to play for a win streak. Tips 3 and 4 will help you with exactly just that, and that is to level aggressively and slam items, especially in the early game. For leveling, check out my leveling guide that I made for previous sets, but I'll also be updating this in the future, so subscribe below if you have not already. And while you're at it, hit the like button. For each like, I'll take 1 sip of water, and I need water to live, so I would definitely appreciate that. But in general, for leveling, err on the side of leveling earlier. So in the early game, that means leveling up to level 4 at around 2-1, level 5 at 2-5, level 6 at 3-1 or 3-2, and level 7 at 3-5. I will pretty much always level at these stages during the first week of the new set, and if I could level up even earlier than these timings, if I get something like an economy augment, I definitely will as well. Now for slamming items, this one's a little more complicated, because you'll want to focus on flexible offensive items, flexible tank items, and early game items. So you might be wondering, what is a flexible item? Well, for tanks, it's pretty simple. This can pretty much be any tank item. Gargoyle Stoneplate is great for comps with one main tank, Warmogs is just a general good early game tank item, Titan's Resolve is great if you want a hybrid tank and damage item, Bramblevest if you're facing a lot of ADs, Dragonclaw if you're facing a lot of APs, Fimbulwinter is good against AoE damage, and Redemption is good for teams with multiple tanks. Next are the early game items. These are great for win streaking because they give you a lot of early power, and these pretty much help you the most in winning early game fights. Zezerot Portal is a bit of a dirty trick because it gives you a 1500 health unit during stage 2, which is ridiculous for that point in the game. You definitely want to place this on a frontline unit, and it'll give you time for your DPS units to kill all the units on the enemy team. Next up is Sunfire Cape, great HP and great damage. Nothing much else to say there. Locket of the Iron Solari. A lot of teams can't handle the extra flat shielding on your team, and you'll want to use this if you have at least 1 2-star because it gives a bigger shield based on the champion level. Ionic Spark, great early game damage item. Static Shiv, probably the best early game damage item because you get flat damage on every couple of autos. This one, just number wise, it's the best early game item for damage. Rageblade, great for early game fights because fights are typically longer, and that means you have more time to stack the Rageblade. It works similarly to Archangel's staff, but Rageblade is a little more flexible, so I try to avoid Archangels, unless I already know I'm going for an AP comp. Thieves Gloves is the last item. This is like the most iconic flex item since every comp has at least one person who can use this, and it's also good if you have something like the Cybernetic Augment. The trickiest category is offensive items because many offensive items just aren't flexible. Every team can pretty much use the same tank items, but not every team can use the same offensive items. This is because champions typically scale off of AP or AD. Luckily, here's a list of items that are slammable for flexing. Starting off with Hand of Justice, this is the most iconic offensive flex item in the game. It gives both stats, AD and AP, and healing. Next up, we have the healing items, Bloodthirster and Hextech Gunblade. These two items, they're not my first choice for early game slams because Omnivamp, not that great in the early game because your units don't do that much damage and therefore you don't heal as much. But if you have nothing else to build, almost any team comp can use a healing item for their carry later on in the game. Whenever you want to itemize your offensive carries, you always need flat damage such as AD or AP, a damage multiplier such as critical strike, attack speed, or mana regeneration if they rely more on their ability, and lastly, you want a way to heal. Some people get it from items such as Bloodthirster or Hextech Gunblade, some people get it from augments. All in all, these items aren't that great for helping you win, but if you need to slam an item to get extra value, they're a great option. Next up, we have the two aura items, Chalice of Power and Zeke's Herald. These items are both great ways of enhancing your carry later on in the game without committing a slot on your main unit. And again, this works out because they're both aura items. So it's a great way to use up random components that you might not necessarily need in the future. The next two are a little weird as well, Quicksilver and Giant Slayer. Both of these are not my first choice, but again, similar to the healing from before, a lot of carries can use these items later on. Giant Slayer, it just amplifies all types of damage against tanky units, and Quicksilver, obviously it helps you avoid crowd control effects, which allows your carry to shine uninterrupted. As you guys can see already, tank and early game items are generally preferred over the offensive items because they're just simply more flexible. While the offensive items are not bad per se, they're just not as strong in the early game. Which would you rather have, a Static Shiv or a Bloodthirster in Stage 2? The answer to me is very simple. But hey, if you're trying to win streak, you need every edge you can get, so if you only have the item components for like a Giant Slayer, just go ahead and build it because you just need to slam anything in the early game. Later on in the set, if you guys are unsure about what items to slam, always check out the meta snapshot at bunnymuffins.lol, which I update every Friday. Tip number 5 is to read champion abilities. This sounds so basic, but even pro players don't even know what their units do. In the Set 5 World Championships, Milk, who was an NA representative, exclusively played the Kled comp. However, not even he knew that Kled had an enhanced auto attack every 4th attack. It is crucial to know what each unit does because it has huge positioning implications. In Milk's case, Kled just did damage, so it wasn't that important, but other abilities are critical to know about. For example, did you know that Soraka insta-kills units when she casts her ability when you are at full HP? Since you guys are using this guide, you may find yourself in a situation where you are full health and then you randomly see a Soraka in your shop. You better not skip it, you better buy it and put it in, because when you're at max health and you play Soraka, she is probably the best unit in the game. In terms of the new champions, let's take a look at Soam. Soam gets a bonus spell after 3 casts. That means we need to look into how to get additional casts for Soam. Well, mages seem to be a good option, because the mage trait allows you to cast twice. This means you pretty much need to have the mage trait for Soam in order to be effective. So if you are deciding between playing 0 mages and 6 Lagoon versus 3 mage and 3 Lagoon, you definitely would rather have 3 mage and 3 Lagoon in order to make Soam worth playing. Other important information to know are champion ranges and ability targeting. This is incredibly important for positioning because some range units may only have 2 range, so you wouldn't want to put them in the back corners because then they waste time walking up to the front. Next, some abilities target randomly. Some do it specifically. You need to make a distinction between the two. Zyra, for example, targets the most units in a line. So if you're facing a Zyra, you may want to not put every ranged unit in the back line since she could potentially hit all of them. The next one is a bit of a dirty trick. Tip number 6 is, if possible, focus on old champions and traits. This is unfun, but let's take a look at this logically. Whenever a new set comes out, many players will want to try the new champions and traits. This means that all of these will be more contested than usual, which makes them less worth it to play. Now, I'm not saying to never play any of the new stuff, I'm just saying to only play it when you actually hit the units naturally. For example, everyone will want to try out the new Lagoon trait or any of the new dragons and carries. This means these comps and champions will be highly contested. I highly doubt anyone is going to go into their first few games and plan on playing Xayah carry, for example, because Xayah carry, we've been doing that for all of set 7 already. Instead, everyone wants to do a zippy Namzi reroll. They want to use Dark Flights, Nyla, Pantheon, Graves, Soam, Lux, and Kaisa, and you could use this information to your advantage. Here are some traits that are unchanged. Scalescorn and Mirage are pretty much the exact same as they were before. Olaf carry is going to work, and Deja and Yasuo are almost the exact same thing. Here are some traits that only had a minor adjustment, so they're relatively unchanged as well, and that is Dragonmancer Lee Sin, Xayah and Shyvana Ragewing, and Siphon builds. Tip number 7, don't force a comp before the game even begins. A lot of YouTubers and streamers, including myself, want to force a new composition just for the novelty of it or for the fun of it. Don't do this. While it is important to practice every comp for long-term improvement, if you want to climb early on, just play flexibly using the tips I have already laid out. Don't go into a game with a comp in mind already because 1, we don't actually know what's good yet, and forcing a comp generally only works because it is good. 2, take the time to learn how to pivot when people won't punish you as hard early on in the set compared to later on. 3, when you force a comp, you may lose streak more often and thus suffer from the earlier tips that other people are using, because typically, when you force a comp, you're also forcing specific items, which means you are not slamming items, and therefore your early game boards are generally weaker. This is not a good idea at the start of a set. Instead, realize you will play many games of TFT, and you don't need to play that specific composition quite yet. Instead, maybe commit to a comp after you see a few of your items or augments first. For example, if you get a lot of swords and bows early, look to test out Graves, Zeri, or Rengar. If you get a lot of rods and tears, maybe those games try Sohm, Swain, or Kaisa. These don't have to be perfect, we're all trying to have fun, but just going into the game with a flex playstyle in mind means you are less likely to get stuck if you don't hit the items that you want. Tip number 8, always be learning and be non-committal. Just like Tinder matches, don't commit to specific strategies because the meta is constantly changing every single day and even within the same day. One day, one comp will be assumed to be the best, but then the next day, a different comp will come out and counter that. Then the next day after that, the TFT development team will put a hotfix, which flips the meta completely again. Don't commit to a specific comp or playstyle if you're actually trying to get better. Too many things are changing, so you need to keep up with the meta by watching guides, streamers, and YouTubers to know what is happening and changing every single day. Some people spend hours and hours researching what is good, and you may as well leverage their work and save your time by checking out my meta snapshot, which is updated every Friday. Tip number 9 is to have fun and take a break if you're not. Honestly, this is the best tip of them all. TFT is a game that encourages learning and development, but it's easy to let that get in the way of having fun. All these tips are all fine and dandy, but if you have a way of playing that's fun for you, then stick to that, because let's be honest, most of us are not going pro. I don't even know why people want to become pro TFT players so badly, because there simply isn't much of a reward. This means that you should only do it if you truly love the game. If you want to make money, go to the LCS or get a real job. If you want e-girls or e-guys, get good at Valorant.
Okay, honestly, good Valorant players are attractive. Like, why Valorant players gaining all the attention? You could literally just like be fucking ugly, do a new webcam stream, and have this really cute anime character as your webcam display pic, and be good at Valorant, and you could attract all the girls out there. And then you put on that like sexy deep voice. Yo, what's up? I love Valorant. I'm immortal. And then like all the girls will literally like slide into your DMs.
If you want to appear smart, start playing manual chess. Jokes aside, there's no single right way to play, learn, or improve, but enjoying yourself while doing it is always going to be a big advantage. There will almost certainly be times with the new set where the game is frustrating, you lose a bunch of rounds in games, and if you're not having fun and getting frustrated with things not working, take a break and come back to the game. If you want to get your TFT fix without the Sigma grind set, you could always hop over onto YouTube and watch a few games to see if you can learn something from that. Again, all these tips work particularly well in the start of the set, and there's lots to be discovered, and YouTubers and streamers will have likely grinded out hundreds of games on PBE already, so they already know what works and what doesn't. But that's all I have for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Leave a comment below with any questions, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.